This is Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network. I am your host, Mark. Dylan Hicks hops on the podcast to talk about a lot of stuff. He starts off taking piano lessons until his piano was stolen. True story. His first real foray into professional music was volunteering at a radio station. In fact, he was just as passionate about writing about music as he was writing music. After years of playing, he started a family and left music completely to start a career in writing. So we talk about the pros and cons of being musically obscure, comparing his approach to music in his 20s to that in his 50s, and writing an album of fictitious cover songs as his first release in over a decade, and how it ties into one of his novels. He's written more than just articles, novels, and pop songs. His album with John Munson, Munson Hicks Party Supplies, began life as a musical and evolved into an album. Dylan has released 2 albums since 2021 and is working on a 3rd to complete his Bird trilogy. But he has several other projects in various stages of completion. In the meantime, check out Dylan's latest album, Airport Sparrows, and follow him on Instagram at @TheDylanHicks. Pick up his music on Bandcamp or wherever you get music. Follow us at Performance ANX on social media. Reach out there or the performanceanxietypod@gmail.com. Buy us a coffee at ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety or get merch at performanceanx.threadless.com. Check out our sponsors. We've got some great stuff going with them. Now let's get started with Dylan Hicks on Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Yeah. Okay. You can edit the email a little bit. Okay. This is Dylan Hicks of Dylan Hicks and Small Screens and Other Projects. Our latest album is Airport Sparrows. I had a great time talking to Mark about it on Performance Anxiety, one of my favorite podcasts. I hope you can check it out and check out all the episodes. Okay. I feel good, yeah. I'm going to bring my kombucha to a different spot, I think.
Oh, nice. No problem.
I don't know why I've become a habitual kombucha drinker, and it is kind of, I haven't really decided even after 4 or 5 years of this whether I like it or not. I drink it almost every day. You got to shake it up because there can be some, I don't want to get too graphic, but some kind of seminal moments, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, it's just like,
yeah. It's surprising to me. I don't know. I've tried to open myself up to new things, even things that I didn't like beforehand.
Right.
But one of the things that I will never open myself up to, and my wife will kill me for this, is she's from Alabama, and one of the things she used to eat as a kid were these nasty ass banana sandwiches.
Oh yeah,
and
that's Elvis did that too. So is that more widespread than I thought? Huh?
Elvis's I can deal with because his was peanut butter. My wife's was banana and mayonnaise.
Oh no, that's
2 things that should never go together.
No, if it's bananas and Cool Whip, sure, but not on bread.
Yeah, or even peanut butter. I can deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I can't. It just gives me. She yelled at me. She's like, have you ever tried it? I'm like, no, it's disgusting. She's like, how can you say it's disgusting if you've never had it? So I tried one and I spit it out.
Yeah.
It's not to get.
I have a problem like that. It's kind of a different part of the spectrum in terms of the food spectrum, but I don't like any food from the watery world.
Oh, well, you would get along with my wife then.
But people are always saying, oh, you haven't had the right, and they try to give me this fancy salmon or this or that, and then it's like, it's just yucky to me. I don't, I have had a few bites, and it disgusts me.
Yeah, you and my wife would get along this. She actually
okay. Well, if this thing it seems like things are on the rocks between this and the sandwiches. So, I mean, I'm happily married.
Well, yeah.
But,
So, before we get too deep into fish and banana mayonnaise sandwiches.
Right, yeah.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, yeah.
Oh, my pleasure. I've really enjoyed the music, and I like to find out a little bit about the history of each guest and find out how you got to where you are in your musical career. Mm-hmm. And so finding out that you're born in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
And your parents were kind of hippies. So growing up, whether it's in Austin or Minnesota, because you moved there when you were 12, I think.
Right, but we had kind of a peripatetic. I had kind of a peripatetic childhood. I was born in Austin, but I don't really have childhood memories from Austin. My parents were divorced, but before that, they moved to Minot, North Dakota, which is a small city in the center of North Dakota.
I've heard of it.
Okay, yeah. Why not Minot? Reason's the reason.
So I like that.
But there were some other spots in between. Lived very briefly in DeKalb, Illinois, and then another town in North Dakota called Crosby. It's very far northwest.
Oh, wow.
Very small. Then a small city called Idaho Falls, Idaho. My stepdad was a newspaper reporter, so the moves were usually precipitated by he'd get a different gig at a different newspaper as a reporter or sometimes as a reporter editor.
Okay.
And so we came to Minneapolis because he went to graduate school for journalism here in Minneapolis, and that's what brought us here in 83 when I was 12. So I don't really have roots anywhere else other than Minneapolis. I mean, we moved around so much, and I always say I'm from Austin, Texas. I think partly because that way, if we play one of the more country-inflected tunes, it feels a little more earned. You know?
I like that.
But, you know, that I tend not to emphasize that so much if I'm going a little further south as a performer, you know, where people might not be so persuaded.
I have to admit, I do a little bit of the same thing because I was born in Killeen, Texas.
Okay, yeah.
But my family, we moved out when I was like 3. So I have literally zero memories of it, but I always pipe up. I'm from Texas.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, my parents were born and raised in New Jersey. They were out. My dad was on.
My mom's from New Jersey. Yeah.
Oh,
so
nice.
We're kind of similar. Yeah.
My dad was in the military. He was Vietnam, so he was on Fort Hood, and so he was out there for years, and so I was just born on Fort Hood, and then we moved out to they lived in Copper's Cove, so you know that's what I claim my hometown is until basically really moving to Winchester here where I'm at in Virginia.
Yeah, okay.
We moved around a lot as a kid, and not because of military. Similar to you, actually. My dad would just get different jobs and a better job each step of the way, and then end up actually back in New Jersey for 13 years. So.
Oh, where?
I was in Branchburg, so like central New Jersey, right on the border of like Hunterdon and Somerset counties.
Okay. So my mom's from Elizabeth, so that's kind of
I know exactly where that is. Yeah. So I kind of understand what you're saying about saying you're from Texas, but not really knowing what it's like. Not really remembering too much.
Well,
of it.
I went back to play South by Southwest, I guess just once. That was really fun.
Oh, cool.
But I didn't have anybody to look up, you know, particularly.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway.
So, all right. So you moved around a lot. You mentioned that your parents were kind of hippies. So was music a big part of that? Because I know a lot of times, a lot of the hippies, they were huge into music and they would play all kinds of stuff. Was that the case for you?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, my parents, let's see. My biological parents aren't musicians as players, really. My mom's a pretty good singer. She doesn't do that anymore, but she was raised Catholic, but she, in midlife, became an ordained Presbyterian minister.
Oh, wow.
So she would do some singing in church sometimes, or just not leading the choir, but leading the congregation. She likes to sing, but, you know, it's not something she's concentrated on. My biological father, he loves music. He's not musical himself, but he was born in, 43. So he had pretty cool taste when he was in late high school and college. So he went to college in the early 60s. And that was a period when a lot of the collegiate types were really into jazz. And so he was also into classical music and musicals, but he loved Sonny Rollins and Miles Davis, Dave Brubeck.
Oh, I love Dave Brubeck too.
Yeah, Ma Jamal, a lot of the stuff that was kind of popular with the younger set at the time. And when I was growing up, those LPs were sort of obsolete, you know, so I just kind of liberated them from they were just sitting at his parents' house.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't steal them really, like they weren't being used. Some of them are a little hacked up, but a lot of them are in good shape. So,
nice.
So that was part of my musical upbringing, I guess, a little later. But as a boy, I know in Austin, there were a lot of outdoor concerts. And one was by a guy named Mance Lipscomb. He might know. He was a blues singer, Texas blues singer, who was born in like 1892. So I saw him in like 1971.
Wow.
You know, I mean, I think he's the only performer that I know of who was born in the 19th century that I saw perform. I don't remember that.
Wow.
But Jerry Jeff Walker, you know,
oh yeah,
a lot of those. I don't think they ever saw Willie Nelson, but they did see Jerry Jeff Walker and some of the people who were kind of around the outlaw country scene. And then, you know, my mom, she loved Frankie Valli and Dion the Belmonts and a lot of stuff when she was a teenager in New Jersey, Elvis Presley, a lot of the doo-wop stuff, Sam Cooke. And then my stepdad's a little bit younger. He was a big Beatles fan, so he was kind of just a little bit younger, so that the Beatles were the thing that got him into popular music.
Okay.
He also likes folk music, singer-songwriters, and he likes to play a nylon string guitar, so he'll play some Bach things on the guitar. He's not a professional guitarist, but he's a lifelong amateur, so and, you know, a pretty good player. So I did grow up around music in that way.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Hey, everybody. I've got a great sponsor that I want to talk to you about. For a long time, I wondered if CBD was something that might benefit me, but I had no idea how to find out. I didn't know what products were available, what companies were reputable, and really even what questions to ask to get the answers I needed. That's why I'm so glad I found Pure Spectrum CBD. They helped me discover what CBD could do for me. They were awesome at determining what my needs were, and they helped me find a starting point. I've started with the tincture and the isolate, but there's also gummies, topicals, mints, and a lot more. Pure Spectrum not only has CBD products for wellness, they also have them for fitness and recovery. There's even CBD for your pets. The website has a ton of information and chat options are available, and all their products are third-party tested, and the results are available right on their website. So go to purespectrumcbd.com to do your own research, and when you check out, use code PERFORMANCEANX for 15% off your order. Check them out on Instagram at Pure Spectrum Hemp and subscribe to their email list for sales, new products, and updates. Pure Spectrum, refined phytocannabinoid wellness products for all lifestyles. What was it that really got you into music out of all of that? What hit you and made you really start to want to discover more and start playing yourself?
So I was surrounded by music, and my parents would play music just about every night, you know, after dinner. It was just something that was on more. I mean, they watched TV too, but it was just on a lot.
Yeah.
And at a pretty good volume, like not blasting, but for parents, you know, it was a reasonable volume.
Yeah.
You know, like
it was high for a parental volume.
Yeah, not like you come over to the house, you're like, is there music on? You know, I feel like there's some kind of atmospheric something that's, you know, definitely like you could hear it, you know. And then let's see, I did take piano lessons for a little while when I was a boy in Idaho. So this was the early Reagan years, so 81, maybe 82.
Okay.
Because of the divorce, the custody deal was that I would spend most of the summers with my biological dad. Then he remarried in 82. So the lessons were they weren't very long. They were probably only a year and a half. And then we moved to Minneapolis. So I'd missed the summers with the lesson. And then we moved to Minneapolis and the piano didn't move with us.
Oh.
It was not because my parents consigned the piano with the hopes that we would get a new piano in Minneapolis. But I guess the essence of the story is that the people to whom they consigned the piano stole the piano.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's the bluntest way to put it. We never got paid for the piano. They must have done something with it.
Oh, no.
It wasn't a valuable piano. It was a very modest console-sized upright. And I wasn't a prodigious or a disciplined student, so it wasn't like I was saying, "Get me my piano." I just moved on.
Like most kids, piano lessons are chores and not.
Yeah, I wasn't really. Yeah, but I did learn how to play some chords. Then on my stepdad had guitars kicking around. The one that I learned on, I guess, was a Harmony guitar from the '60s. If you know, they're kind of an off-brand that was. It was a big dreadnought sized, you know, like a big dreadnought Martin, but very inexpensive guitar, but a pretty good sound. I didn't know you could adjust the action on guitar, so this was like a dobro. I mean, it was very difficult to play, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a dobro, but like after the third fret, it was kind of like, wow.
It sure felt like one.
Yeah. So I don't know. I wasn't, but I was mainly, I did radio work. I was a volunteer at a community radio station here in Minneapolis, which is also where I met my wife, Nina Hale.
Oh, cool.
She was another volunteer. So I like to be around that. I did volunteer shows. I did a jazz show, and then I did a hip hop show, and then I did a kind of variety show. So my tastes were always pretty eclectic. And then I was an only child in the sense that I do have half brothers, but I didn't spend the school year with them. So I kind of identified as an only child in the sense that I was the only kid in the house during the school year, you know?
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So in addition to my friends and parents, and my fellow volunteers at the station, I read a lot of music criticism and history. So I loved, at that time, this was the 80s. So I liked to read Real Marcus and Bob Christgau, and later Greg Tate and Martin Williams, who was a jazz critic. I just loved to devour that kind of stuff and learn as much as and also the liner notes to LPs.
Oh yeah. So that was a big one for me.
So that was always part of my thing, was listening, but also trying to contextualize that through reading. And then later in life, I did do some professional writing about music. That was sort of closer to my ambition as a teenager. I didn't feel like I was a particularly, I didn't really think of myself as a musician so much. I thought of myself as a fan who maybe would do something with music, but who could also play some songs. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I've never really had that sense of, like, I know that a lot of my friends who are musicians have a kind of some animosity toward, you know, the critic. The critic, yeah. Of course, now it's like you're lucky to get anybody to write anything about you, but no kidding. I've always felt that I was sort of aligned with both camps to some degree. Like, I'll be frustrated with, certainly that once in a while I read a piece of criticism that isn't very well turned or doesn't seem to be listening very carefully, but I'm not like, I'm in favor of the pursuit. I like analyzing things and, you know, trying to, so I've done both those things, I guess. Yeah, you live in both worlds. And that, I guess that was my first real question is what was your first, I don't know if it's love, I guess maybe, but what was and I think maybe I actually kind of just answered it. Yeah. What was your first career ambition? Was to be more of a writer than a musician? Well, as a teenager, at least, I mean, I didn't have it really mapped out, Mark. What you didn't? Oh, what were you doing in your teenage years? I did a little writing as a teenager, you know, just kind of for fun, kind of, it's not plagiarized, but very derivative, you know, sort of trying to write reviews and that kind of thing. And I wrote songs, they were kind of novelty songs. So I was sort of doing both things. I would say the main reason I thought I did go to college, but I wasn't focused, and I had some other things going on. So I was politely asked to leave. I think college. Your family and my family are running like parallel lives, because I ended up doing the same exact thing with photography. So, okay, yeah. I went to school for it later. Same thing. I went back later, but there was a long gap, and I worked retail. Same here. Okay, yeah. So, I guess I was working this funny internship in the summer of 1990 that my stepmother had set up for me. I'm not sure if this merits, you can always edit this out if it's too boring, but it was kind of, it was sort of one of the last summers that you could have had this job. I worked at the call center for what was then called Arthur Anderson, which is Accenture now, but, you know, accounting. And, I remember that too. Yeah, so I was in the Loop in Chicago, so I would, you know, take the train in, and that was kind of fun. About 3 or 4 of us who were either temps or, you know, young people would work in this little area, and then some older, more professional people would answer the phones and take messages, and then they would type out the messages on and then feed them to us. It would come in through sort of like receipt paper. That was sort of a combination of a movie ticket and kind of a Morse code. So, I mean, it wasn't code, it was language. It was English, but it was, it was kind of, it looked like you got a receipt from like a movie and you had to kind of decipher it a bit.
Okay.
And it would say something like, Bob, the Henderson report is overdue. Or it would say, Karen, remember, dinner with the Hendersons tonight, or whatever. Any message.
Right.
It was like a perk for the employees. You didn't have to get your own messages on the machine.
Oh, my God.
A 19-year-old would hand them to you at your desk. So after you got 3 or 4 of them, you just kind of ride the elevators up and down the stairs and say, like, here you go, Karen. Henderson report's overdue.
Wow.
And, that was the internship. I don't know what I was really preparing for.
I don't. Sounds like you were preparing to be replaced by email.
That's exactly what it said. Yes, exactly. So, like I say, I couldn't have lasted too much longer. But anyway, right. I had that internship. I was living in Chicago with my biological dad and my stepmother, and then their kids who were young at the time, and. My stepmother had an old upright piano from some Chicago manufacturer, probably from the turn of the last century. And I played that a little bit and started writing some songs that summer. And also, I kind of thought, I got to do something creative that I can have by December, like to give away as Christmas gifts or just to friends or whatever around that time.
Oh, cool.
And I don't know. And I remember thinking like, maybe I should make a movie because I think a friend of mine had a video cassette, recorder, and we had fooled around with it.
That's dangerous.
Like, well, I don't really, yeah.
Teenagers
because I wasn't going to make Blair Witch Project. I was going to make something that no one would ever watch.
Right.
Except like somebody who was like compelled to, because I was like, hey guys, look at what we did, So I decided that was too much work and I didn't really know what I was doing. But I did also have some friends who had the Fostex and Tascam 4-track cassette recorders that were prevalent at the time. Yeah, okay. So they had those. They were a little older than I am. A guy named Terry Easton, a guy named Al Lehman. And so I just recorded some of these songs, these kind of novelty songs at their apartments, or houses on those things. And then I just used a dual cassette player, like a boombox with 2 cassettes, and made dubs of those, and then we just walked them over to the record store and I sent them to some, alt weeklies and stuff. So that kind of determined it because it turned out that we got a few little items, in the Minneapolis alt weeklies and it sort of, it sort of like gave rise to the idea that, well, maybe we should perform and kind of put together a little band. And so I would say it took a few years before I thought of it as being more than kind of a lark that I just kind of stumbled in and eventually became something that I thought, I would like to professionalize this somehow.
Right.
Yeah. So I'd say the spark, the love of music was since I started collecting 45s when I was 7.
Okay.
The music that was not marketed toward children, at least, it's not little children.
Yeah.
And so I've always had that and I still do. I still love records and, playing my stereo. But it was probably kind of in my 20s that I started to kind of think about myself more as a musician, really not till my mid-20s.
So is that when, I guess maybe you can kind of explain this a little bit better. Is that how you either hooked up with or formed 3 Pesos?
Yeah, well, so those guys I just mentioned, Al and Terry, who owned the 4-track players, were they became in that group, and there was a drummer named Pat O'Brien, and then a bass player named Steve Parker. These were all, I don't know, they're maybe 5 to 8 years older than I am. I'm not quite sure. They had played in bands. They had more experience. They're all good players. I wasn't, a technically accomplished player by any means. So I mainly sang and wrote the songs and played some rhythm guitar. So yeah, we did that. And then there was some personnel changes and name changes. And I just kind of played in different groups under my own name throughout the 90s. And, we did some touring and, there was a label that was run under there was kind of an umbrella operation that Paul Stark, who was one of the co-founders of Twin Tone Records, as you know, to put out the Replacements records and things like that. He didn't oversee these labels, but he helped kind of, he helped set them up with distribution and that kind of thing. And they ran independently out of the building that he owned, or maybe he rented it, I'm not sure. Anyway, so that was a label called No Alternative, a woman named Kim Randall put together. So we put out 3 records with them. I had a lot of fun. It wasn't, it didn't really turn into significantly remunerative operation for me. So as I was about 30, I don't know. I really was pretty young still now. I think she's 30, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's so, I was kind of exhausted by that. You know, I just I didn't really foresee things changing drastically in terms of really making any money doing it.
Okay.
And my wife and I were thinking about having kids. And I was working in record stores and doing other jobs in music that, you know, they were kind of enjoyable, but I thought maybe I could do something that was a little more, that felt a little, that I could be better at, because I wasn't always so great at. I was, you know, doing like some booking that I was not good at because I'm not good with people on the phone. Like. So that's when I started working as a freelance journalist, and that led to some staff positions. And then I started writing novels and that kind of thing. And we were raising our son. So my whole 30s, I really didn't play music much. You know, it was a lot of work. I was working a lot, and then I was, you know, parenting, as you know, is a lot of work. And and I guess it was sort of depressing for me to think about trying to play it a little bit, what I mean to say is that it was, psychologically, it was easier for me not to really play at all.
Really?
During that period. Yeah, because I didn't think I would be able to do what I wanted to do given the time I had.
Okay.
And so
you just put it down completely.
I mean, once in a while I'd sit down and play, but you know, if you're away for long, you kind of sit down and you play. You're like, not very good, you know. And so,
that's kind of surprising to me, because I was checking out your discography and the early music and all. Mm-hmm. I saw a TV show that you were a part of called What?
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah,
and it looks like you're having a blast on that. It looks like you're having so much fun. In fact, there's the song "You Make a Better Door" off of that show. Is just awesome. I absolutely love that track.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, sure, it has been said before. It's true, though. You make a much better door than a window. No, I can't see through you. Don't feel much through you. Oh, yeah, it has been said before. It's true, though. You make a much better door.
So,
we were really young then.
It looked like you guys were having a lot of fun, at least during that period of time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and that was, I don't know what year that was. That was a friend of mine, Chris Strauss, who put that show together. Not sure how old we were, but I was probably young, 23 or 4.
Yeah, I think it says here on YouTube, February of 94.
Okay, so yeah, I must have been 23.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Yeah, I mean, and I continued to have fun, but it was just, I don't know. I mean, I think it was, somebody else was asking about this, you know, there's a lot of advantages. Obscurity has its advantages.
Yeah.
In the sense that it does give you some freedom as an artist to kind of pursue what you want. There's not a lot of pressure from business sources or from fans. So you have to be a certain way. We're really, you've established a reputation, a commercial reputation or an artistic reputation that's difficult to break away from.
Right.
That's an advantage. But having said that, obscurity can sometimes feel like failure. And so you have to kind of push through. And if you want to do this your whole life, to kind of think like, and I think at that age, I'm 52 now. I just turned 52, mind you. But
well, happy birthday, belated. I guess.
I don't really have a lot of. I mean, I'm not saying that I never feel like, I wish that there were a larger audience. I still sometimes have those feelings, but you get to a point where you're not thinking like, well, the phone rang. I wonder if it's Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, it's not. I mean, it might be Jimmy Kimmel, but it'd be like, no, I work in IT. I got a call from the Geek Squad. Yeah, it says when you're 29, you kind of still think, maybe I can try to make this a kind of a semi-big thing.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of the dream was sort of like, I don't know if that's going to happen. And I worry that I'm going to become adrift and resentful if I don't shift to something else.
Okay.
Then later in life, I was able to kind of come back And, and I have been having a lot, I mean, not every aspect of playing music is fun, but for the most part, I have been having a lot of fun. And, and I kind of it's psychologically advantageous to like what you're doing currently more than what you did in the past.
Yeah.
But I like what I'm doing now. It's like, it feels more like that's just you change and you just do different stuff. And, so anyway.
I totally understand that. Again, we're doing parallel things because I went to college for photography, did that professionally for like 12 years until my wife and I had kids, and the roller coaster of an income from being a freelance photographer in Southeast Alabama, I had to get something a little steadier, and so put that away until my kids were a little older, and now I don't necessarily do photography professionally, but I do mostly live music photography at this point.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So
and there's something about the 50s. It's a little bit like, it reminds me of my 20s in a way, because when I started doing creative stuff, I wasn't thinking I didn't really have very concrete ideas about how I could make a living doing it. I was just doing it.
Exactly.
And also when you're 22, you're not worried about that. You're like, wait a minute, the numbers just don't add up here. It'll all work out. I think, or it won't.
Exactly.
And then I feel like in my 40s and 50s, it's been a little closer to that, just kind of doing it. And also I think I'm starting to see some people my own age coming out to shows again, because if they had kids, those kids are independent now, or maybe they didn't have kids or whatever, and they, they're just a little bit free or whatever, There was definitely that period in my 30s when I was like, oh, we're doing a show. Well, I didn't play much in my 30s, but, my early 30s. Oh, yeah, well, I hope it goes great,
Yeah. Tell me how it was.
Leave the house for another 12 or 14 years.
Yeah. Let me know how it was. Yeah, I know. I would do the same exact thing. And we're pretty close in age, and obviously our friends would be about the same age. And it happened to almost everybody I know, too. It's, hey, this band's in town. Yeah, great. All right. Well, maybe a clip will show up on YouTube or something.
Yeah.
So how did you get into writing professionally? What was your first real gig as a writer?
Yeah. Well, I'd done some stuff for fanzines and things like that in my 20s, but not a whole lot. I think I'd done a few little things professionally then. But I had friends, who were editors, and a friend of mine named Heidi Rashke, she was editing a music magazine that Musicland was funding, strangely enough, but they let them get away with some pretty cool stuff. So I just did an internship kind of later. It was in my early 30s. I was a little old for an intern, but it was fun.
Yeah. Did
that, and then while I was doing that, I started kind of submitting some stuff to the City Pages, which was one of the alt weeklies that we had then. And I got assignments pretty quickly, and I don't know, I always had a certain linguistic aptitude, and I did know music and I knew music quite well, and I knew some of the other arts well enough to kind of, do my research and get by. So I kind of caught the tail end of a little more lucrative period. It wasn't that lucrative, but I mean, like, it wasn't dying quite yet.
It wasn't like that whole job where email took your position.
No, it was like it was the end of this sort of that era of the all weekly and the sort of being kind of freelance doing art stuff. I did see it diminish, but when I first got into it, I felt like I was getting a lot of work, and I kind of liked that, working on deadline, and I liked the editorial aspects when I started doing that too. And then that started to kind of, that paper that I worked at, I eventually had a staff position at, was purchased by another company that they had a sort of different way of looking at things. So,
as is often the case.
Yeah, I probably should have stuck around and gotten fired, but I just left.
the old stick around till they get fired.
Yeah, but anyway, then I kind of I did freelance, but then I started writing fiction, and that led to a couple of novels. So it was all just sort of writing on spec and then submitting stuff. And you get rejections a lot, but you get acceptances, and, so it was kind of like that.
Your novel, Boarded Windows, Is that what got you back into writing? Because you did do a musical companion piece for that. Was that the idea from the start, or was it the novel? Like, you know what? I kind of want to get back into this. The songwriting aspect.
Yeah, the latter really. So I wrote the novel. The novel was sort of suffused with musical references, maybe a little to a fault, but I don't know. I just got carried away. And there's a character in the novel, and I guess this sort of pertains to my roots we were talking about earlier, but named Bowling Green, who's kind of presented as sort of a third-tier outlaw country figure, you know, kind of like, I mean, maybe once he opened for Jerry Jeff Walker. Yeah, you know, it was just one night, you know, and then Jay, let's look for another guy. I don't know. Made some records, you know, and that kind of thing. So I had sort of already written in the book like some references to him and his character. Then I had written like a satiric entry of his catalog in the Rolling Stone Illustrated or the Rolling Stone Record Guide, like one of those volumes that I had when I was a kid. So I had song titles and some ideas, and then I just started kind of writing some of those. So that was really just kind of what compelled me to do that. Because it was sort of like an assignment, like, oh, what would it be like if you wrote this guy's songs, you know? And so eventually I kind of came up with this idea that I would cover this material that is fictitious and doesn't really exist, but I would it was like a tribute album. And, you know, in the end, it wasn't like the most perfectly coherent conceptual album, because I also included some songs that were kind of more nebulously related to, I just happened to have them, you know, but it felt like it all kind of was of a piece. It all kind of came from the novel. And yeah. And so that was done really quickly. I mean, I wrote it fairly quickly, but also it was all written after the manuscript had been submitted.
Oh, okay.
All the songs. Yeah.
Wow.
So I did follow the book, and I went into a professional studio, but I was like, this is all we have. We had a fair amount of days, you know, but it was pretty, I guess now it seems pretty luxurious, but at the time I hadn't played for a while, so it seemed kind of like we were trying to get things done in a hurry. Actually, it probably took longer to make than my last record, but by a long shot. But I feel like I'm a little more up to speed now, you know.
Right. So, well, I did love Days of Dayton, Nights of Columbus. I love that song. That is
thanks.
Great.
Yeah.
Days of Dayton, Nights of Columbus, down in Cincy just making the scene. Flat, broken wall, Parkinado, shaking a Coke machine. Fast asleep in the shadow of the sirens, nodding off in Huber Heights. And I haven't even gotten to the Days of Dayton, not to mention the Columbus night.
That was fun. Also, the guy Joe Savage is a steel guitar player in town who's really good, and he kind of, that's one of the tunes that he kind of helps enliven.
Oh, nice. You wrote that as a companion piece for a novel.
Yeah.
But then you kept writing. Did that
and then
spark
I wrote
it?
another novel called Amateurs, and that did probably a little bit better in terms, I mean, I got some nice reviews on that and nice responses. I liked that book. I didn't do a musical companion to that one. And then after that was published, I made another record produced by John Munson. And I don't know, I guess since then I've started a lot of manuscripts, but usually I've abandoned a lot of them in fairly early stages, really. I haven't even really given them, you know.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know, I think it was like about a year ago, that I had a detective novel, kind of a literary detective novel that I was sort of working on and off. And I would pick it up and think like, yeah, there's some good stuff in here. Nina and I went to a little way up north in Minnesota, like it was so cold. I smashed the car because I slipped off. It was a fun trip, but it was kind of a traumatic one. And it was like 75 below before the wind chill factor. You know, it was really cold.
Oh my God.
I mean, I'm kidding, but it was really cold. I brought this manuscript up here and I was like, I don't know. I don't think this is really happening. And I think that's I think eventually then I decided, you know what? Right now, you're not working on book-length manuscripts. You're just playing music, and you can do some freelance writing or freelance editing. That's great. But so I wouldn't mind doing that again. But I just lost a little steam in that. And I feel like songwriting can have a literary component. So I still feel like I get to work with words.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to mention to you was that one of the things I love about your writing is that each of your songs is a story. It's very well written. They're like little concise little novels almost in each song. And that I love that. I really appreciate each song being a story in and of itself, and it's fantastic.
Thanks.
And I think maybe this is because of you're a writer. I love the album Add Out. I love how you start that. Meanwhile, back at the copy store.
Oh yeah.
Starting in a whole album with the word meanwhile. It kind of blew my mind. I loved that.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Because I'm sitting there thinking, all right, so this is a whole new album. Starting, what did I miss beforehand? What is going on in here? I've got to pay I got to pay attention now.
Meanwhile, back at the copy store, I loosely worked till 3 or 4. My eyes were red and underscored. Most things in life are crashing bore, but you were interesting to me. Interesting to me. Standing by the doomed down tree.
I think one of the things I like about songwriting is that you can they can be clear and elliptical at the same time.
Okay.
Like you can write a song and someone can say, yeah, I think I know what that's about. I've had that experience myself where I can understand the essence of that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of details that aren't present because you can, but I don't usually fill my song with lyrics.
Right.
And so sometimes I kind of know, well, actually the background is this, but I don't include that in the song. Sometimes I just have a sense for it, I don't have it all worked out, but I kind of like that there's a lot of blanks to fill in for the listener. And, but I do like that for there to be some kind of narrative, or at least some images that might be memorable or something. I try to write the lyrics with care, but also think about things like how do they phrase, how do they sing,
right?
And so that is a built-in constraint that you don't have as much. Well, I really want to say this, but I've only got 9 syllables and I need to end with an ooh sound.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that I've noticed is that since you inhabit both worlds of songwriting and novel writing and, and other literary writing, the lyrics are, I don't even know how to, I'm obviously not a writer because I can't figure out how to say this. But for example, lines like, my pants were flared, now they're tapered. I mean, that just says so much in one line. So I really appreciate that type of songwriting, especially now that I'm about to hit my 50s as well. The songwriting you do in Aid to Camp and Here With You are just awesome.
Yeah.
Snow fell, but it wouldn't stay on the ground. We turned our heads, a disturbingly familiar sound. I'm down a 3-hour Brazilan. Let's just sit here for the credits till the song is through. I could be your right-hand man, and I could be your left foot too.
So so you mentioned John Munson earlier. That brings us to the Munson Hicks Party Supplies album.
Okay, yeah.
How did that happen? Because that's basically your music and you're playing on it, but John's doing most of the singing.
Yeah.
Whose idea was that, and how did that kind of coalesce?
Yeah, it was kind of in a kind of roundabout fashion. So John and I had done the Add Out record. We enjoyed working together. And then we were, I think he originally proposed, we got to try to do a musical together,
Okay.
And I was kind of flattered by that idea, that he would ask me to help with that. And I was excited about it. So I came up with some ideas and actually started writing, and I eventually came up with a draft of a book, what they call a book for a musical. And we each contributed songs, and I I was pretty prolific, so I had quite a few songs, and we got as far as a reading where we had some professional and some amateur actors sort of read through it, and then John and I performed the songs, and we had a woman who was an artistic director at one of the theaters kind of observe, and that kind of thing. So, wow. And a few other people. So we got reasonably far along the process. I kept sort of putting it aside. I wasn't sure if it was quite my form, or I just didn't. I liked aspects of it quite a lot, but I wasn't sure if I felt like the whole concept was that. I just wasn't quite compelled to keep working on it day after day, which is usually how something gets done, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, I kind of proposed that we take some of the songs that I thought were strongest, and we both kind of thought so too, or at least he had some really good songs in there too, but I was focusing on my songs. I conceptualized, like, well, yeah, it relates to this concept, but it wasn't as if they advanced the plot. Okay. In a way that some musical songs do. Right. So I sort of thought, what if we took 2 or 3 of those tunes, and then I'll write other songs, and you'll sing most of them, and we'll kind of turn it into an album.
It was a hot day, round about noon, city in view. I'll be there soon. I sang along with the band. I was a slob king of the connoisseurs, gently kicking against the spurs. If you knew me back then, you'll understand. But with the Howard Johnson's gateway beckoning ahead, something overcame me. I thought I might be dead.
So we get some of the work that we've done on this musical, even if the musical doesn't survive. So that's kind of how it kind of sprang out of the musical, which is still in a drawer, but I don't know if I'll pick it up again. But but actually we did, but it was sort of like we had this long period of kind of workshopping some of those ideas, and then those just maybe it was only 2 songs that we repurposed from the musical, and then maybe 1 song title that I rewrote. But it kind of established a template, I guess, and so it was. That was kind of how that came about. Yeah, it was kind of a friend of mine named Franklin Bruno is a songwriter who's about my age. He's also really good. He had done a record with a woman named Jenny Toomey back around the turn of this, like 2001 or 2, I forget, 4 maybe. Same kind of thing, whereas mostly his songs, but she sang. And of course, I love the Waylon Jennings album Honky Tonk Heroes, which is all Billy Joe Shaver's songs, or all but one. And John is a big fan of the Nilsson record of Nilsson Sings Randy Newman. So we both had, which I like too, we both had some references of like, oh, there's some cool albums of like, the songwriter is not the singer, but there's a songwriting voice that runs through the record. It's not just an interpretive singer who sings songs from all over the place, like a Streisand record where she just picks songs that seem to group together.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
There's something going through the whole album. There's some kind of connection. Yeah. Did you guys ever do that live in any fashion? Yeah. I mean, we did a lot of. So the record came out, like we were mastering the record, and then COVID was starting to happen. It was starting to. Well, it was a rumor, and then by the time we kind of finished, we were sending off the record to manufacturing. It was here in the States. So we ended up doing a lot of like outdoor shows over the next couple of summers, in people's backyards and other things like that. And then we did a live stream show that was successful, but kind of weird, it was just us on stage and everything. Yeah. We actually have a show. I guess I can't say it's booked yet, but it seems to be coming together in March, where we will play in a more conventional club. So, cool. So that's kind of ongoing. And, unfortunately we didn't have a chance to really perform it after it was released in the way we normally would. But on the other hand, it kind of came out relatively early into the pandemic, so I feel like people were kind of hungry for it. We got some nice response to it. I think by, further into the pandemic, we're like, all right, I don't know if I want to sit here and watch you on Zoom, Right, yeah, it's a little weird. I've talked to several people who did live streams and all for during the pandemic, and they said it was just a very strange experience because you're playing these songs live to no audience, and there's no reaction, and you just sitting there. The song ends and it's quiet. It's just really weird.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So speaking of the pandemic, that's around the time you made the Accidental Birds album, which definitely it's a different approach for you, it sounds like. There's a little more programming and electronics in it. Was that because you were doing most of it by yourself during the pandemic?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, I did recording equipment. I used to have tape-based some stuff kicking around, but I had sold all that over the years. So I got a digital audio workstation and a microphone, and a lot of that stuff I would just program on the laptop itself or at the kitchen table, not even with like monitors, not so because I thought that was the best way to do it. It was just like, I'm just here. It was easy and it felt very relaxed in a kind of way like, well, this is not even the real thing. I'm just screwing around on my laptop.
Yeah.
And then I would go back and forth between the piano and my laptop and like, well, what was the chord? And I'd play the chord in the piano and then I'd come out with a program the chord in.
Wow.
And then I would come back and play some stuff with my fingers too. But a lot of it, kind of the bedrock, a lot of it was kind of sequenced and programmed and finding interesting sounds and then manipulating the sounds and stuff like that. And then I would send them to friends to do remote recordings in their homes. Okay. And they would send them back, and then I might add synthesizer or a guitar or whatever and sing. Usually when I sent them, I would always have the vocal there so they could hear that. So yeah, it was mostly a product of that. I didn't have the capacity to record drums in my own place. I just have 4 channels and, a few things. Right. But then I did farm out some drum. JT Bates was a great drummer who he played, a lot of people were setting up, I got to set up some kind of recording operation here because that's the only work I'm going to get.
Right, yeah.
So it was also a chance to play with a lot of people. I think I had played with most of those people before or have since, but it wouldn't normally be feasible for me to like, let me write a list of the 13 musicians I'd most like to make this record with. Right. It was a little more, it was practicable to like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? And then, and every time people would send me stuff back like, oh, wow. And I would give them a chart and a few ideas and a demo. They would always give me more than I'd asked for. Always really interesting stuff. I think a lot of people were hungry to kind of just play, and not that they were doing other playing too, but and just to have that kind of freedom to like, oh, okay, I can just kind of let me try this part. And so
yeah, I think it helped people to maybe stretch their boundaries a little bit more than they would normally.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I love playing with people in the moment in a studio, and it's kind of nice to have somebody else sort of in charge of the technical stuff so you're not worried about that.
Yeah.
And I just like the feeling of like, okay, we just captured that, as a group. It was kind of perfect for the moment, and it came together so quickly. It was like, I just kind of dove in. I bought the digital audio workstation. I kind of learned how to work it more or less in a week or so. And I think 2.5 months later, I was sending off the record for mastering.
Wow.
And I was like, very much like, do it. I'm like,
that's awesome. It's funny because I was listening to it and I wasn't really paying attention as I was writing notes and getting ideas for doing this. I wasn't really paying attention to the timeline and when it was, and I heard Twyla Tharp and I was like, that's different.
My teeth are white. This ain't a Gap Band song, but I guess it'll do alright. Anyway, it don't matter now what the DJ spins, 'cause baby, it's you got me shaking like gelatin. I am the strings, you are the heart. You make me dance like Twyla Tharp, and so I bounce like the
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, all right, I kind of like this different approach. It's weird, but my favorite off that album is Drunk from Work. That is my favorite track off that album. I love that song.
Gotta listen a lot. I've had more more than enough. I got something wrong with my rotator cuff. Motor oil colored coffee in this styrofoam cup. Let me try again. She'll pick up. Hey, it's me. Yeah, I know I'm calling. Drunk from work, I'm calling. Drunk from work, I'm calling. Drunk from work again.
Yeah, and that one did have an origin. I had written that before that concentrated block, which maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe it was 3 months, but it was tight.
Right.
That song was something I would keep a folder called like unfinished songs, or or rejected songs, or I don't know what I call it, but it's like it's a little folder of songs that have not gone anywhere.
Right.
And so I kind of was poking through that, and I found that song, and I had played it on the piano, not performed it, but I had written it and played it for myself.
Okay.
And I kind of dug it, but I was like, it felt kind of familiar to me. Like I felt like I think I've written this song already. I mean, it's not. It had a different name and a different melody and a different chord change. but it feels like I don't know. I just couldn't get excited about it, even though there was something about it that I kind of liked. Anyway, so then I was sitting on a love seat with my laptop on my lap, and I just took the chart out that I had written. And again, I just started programming in the chords using these synthesizers and different stuff. And then I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. I like that drum beat. And then I sang it in a kind of range that's a little bit high for me, which sounded kind of cool. And then sent it to JT to play drums on it. I just loved what he did, and we just kept adding to it. Yeah. So it was a good example of something about the recording process sort of revived my interest in this song. And then I started like, oh, I like the song quite a lot. It feels kind of evocative, and I knew I really liked the styrofoam cup line, and that was sort of the main thing that made me want to come back to the song. And then it's just like one line, like, I don't know, I like this image of this guy sort of nervously crushing a styrofoam cup.
Yeah.
I can somehow get a song out of that,
That's why you're a writer and I'm not. I don't know.
Well,
I'm a photographer.
Yeah.
At best, maybe. We see.
My photographs are kind of like, how important is it for you to have your head in the image?
Maybe part of it.
I do have part of it. Yeah, I want to stress that.
All right, so you got this new album that came out in September, and you'd mentioned, you kind of enjoyed the speed at which you were working, and this album, my understanding is that it was fairly quick. Everything was a little looser, a little done a little quickly, not a whole lot of overdubs.
Right. I mean, yeah, I'd say so. So like by jazz standards, it was probably pretty luxurious. Like I think we probably had 4 days in the studio.
Wow.
but they were broken up into 2 different sessions,
Okay.
But by pop standards, it was kind of a little more live, So a lot of the preparation was done off site. I wrote the songs. I deliver like piano and voice demos, or sometimes MIDI demos, or guitar and voice demos, and then a chart. It has some notation and some direction. I'm kind of self-taught, so I always say, like, if there's something wrong, trust the demo. But, they're usually legible, and people can, I'm always really excited, because I've kind of taught myself how to do that, so I'm always like, oh, they're playing back what I wrote. I did it right. But I also give them a lot of freedom. They're all great players. So it's also a lot of sections where it's, I don't try to write people's. Once in a while, I want a melody that I'd like somebody else to convey, or have us play in unison. But I don't try to write, people's parts and stuff like that, because they're going to come up with great stuff.
Okay.
So we just kind of worked privately. And then this time, partly because it is still COVID, but partly because of that, and partly just for the sake of making it efficient and everything else, we just kind of went into the studio and we just started, and we kind of worked on every tune for a couple hours and worked with second, third, fourth takes. And I sang live. I did do an overdub on a couple of tunes, but and we did some overdubs, like some guitar overdubs and stuff. But for the most part, we kind of treated it like a performance in the studio.
Oh,
And I really
so
liked
awesome.
that. There were, definitely some things that surprised me, some things that, a few things that we've never really performed that like, oh yeah, it's kind of, that just sort of really came together quickly. So yeah, it was, and I really like this group is a really fun, it's a large group, and I normally work with 6 of us, and the instrumentation is kind of,
So
we got it.
was it more challenging to work with more people for you, or would it just pretty much fall in line? Especially since it was more a little looser feeling. To the
Yeah.
album.
It's more challenging to schedule, 6 people.
Yeah.
Not for otherwise procedurally.
Okay.
It's a really harmonious group, and personality-wise, we all sort of very supportive and friendly, and there's a little more to. I really enjoyed having some different colors to be like, oh, I could maybe the saxophone and the cello could play this part in harmony or in unison or whatever, and you kind of have different. Some new arrangement opportunities,
Okay.
and a lot of soloists too. Jack Harris, the guitarist, is an amazing player. So a lot of people who can. I'm a decent player, but I don't usually like set aside 4 minutes for me to improvise. So had a lot of different improvisational voices, as well as a lot of people who everybody really. I've been very fortunate always to play in groups with really talented musicians, and I always kind of want to be the worst player in the band.
Yeah. I know
Still pretty good, but kind of the weak link in terms of like technical prowess.
Exactly. I'm a huge fan of Alabama football, and one of my favorite quotes is from Bear Bryant, and he said, "If you're not smarter than me, I don't need you."
Oh yeah.
So I try to follow that in a lot of my creative pursuits. If ever I'm collaborating, if you're not better than me, I don't need you.
Right. Yeah. And I suppose in some ways it's sort of like, and I suppose like in a more confident way, I might say like, well, I'm contributing these songs, or I've contributed these ideas, but I can't do this, and so you try to, hopefully these sort of different talents are kind of, complement one another, and
Right. Well, I love the opener. Instead of this, that feels really loose and really, I don't know. There's just, it's just got this great feel to it. I love it as an opener.
Instead of this, you could be sitting S-shaped in a study carrel, looking through old sandusky phone books for villainous names, fishing off the riverbank, not for sport, or lying face down in a culvert, your khaki shirt stuck to your back by still damp blood, so it's not so bad. No, it's not so bad.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad I put that on the first tune. It was kind of like, that was one of those ones where I guess one of the only ambitions I had for this sort of project, and which some of it kind of carried over from the Accidental Birds thing, because I played with some of those players remotely, and in more of a prose fashion, where I wouldn't really worry about meter or rhyme or rhythm exactly. And I would just write, and then I would take that and see, could I set that to music, and then maybe I'd revise it so that it would sing a little better. But so I don't know how many, maybe 3 or 4 of the songs don't rhyme, and that's one of those ones where I was like, oh, I can still do this and make it sound like a song. Maybe I couldn't do a song after song after song, but if it's in the context of other songs that are more conventionally written, that have a rhyme scheme and maybe a little more regular melody, more regular rhythm, and that kind of thing. So I don't know. I really liked. I kind of want to do. It was fun.
To me, it's one of the songs where your voice comes out, and you've got this Tom Petty, Bob Dylan sound to your singing, and that's one where it definitely comes out. And I really think it fits perfectly with this song.
Oh, cool.
It's one of my favorites on the album. That and the second track, Weather on Your Side, those are great. I love the cello on that.
Yeah, Michelle Kinney, yeah.
I used to be the older brother, and I abused the upper hand. I made you keep my secrets and dished out more than you could stand. But I tried, I tried to atone for all my sins. Anyway, you ought to thank me. You really ought to thank me. I probably thickened up your skin.
Well, the cello's kind of, I don't actually know the cello language myself very well. But it is kind of amazing how it's such a rangy instrument,
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly how many octaves, but I feel like it's 4.5 or something. It's quite large, and
It is
she can fill a bass-like role, but
almost
also
a violin role as
but
well.
also be mistaken for a violin. Yeah. So that's a lot of, and I really like playing with Michelle, and I kind of like how the saxophone and the cello, to me, they're kind of like, even though I joke with Chris, the saxophonist, that he and I are part of the mouth section because we both use our mouths to make music a lot.
The mouth section.
The saxophone and the cello kind of have their own, I guess maybe partly, I suppose, they're their instruments that aren't part of the core rhythm section, I suppose, but they're also they kind of can be a little section in a way.
Okay.
Where they're sort of, they're not a string section, they're not a horn section, but together they're like a little duo that can do things,
Yeah, almost like a lead guitar.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they can take that lead part.
Yeah.
So, all right. So some of my favorites, besides those, I also love Random File.
Oh, yeah.
And I love the ending of Carson City. That guitar is just beautiful.
Oh,
I love that.
Last night I spent a month in Carson City, oh yeah. Last night I spent a month in Carson City.
those were fun. The Random File we haven't really played. We should, but we kind of just did it there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Carson. Yeah, I don't know. We had the long instrumental Airport Sparrows, the title track, and that's like 10 minutes long.
That is awesome.
Oh, okay.
I love
so
that.
Usually, like, if we're doing a gig, it's like, well, how many instrumentals can we play, you know? And still sort of present ourselves as like, we're a pop group, guys. You know, like,
one 10-minute instrumental and everything else has to be. But that's something about this album. Some of the songs are longer than on your previous albums. You've got the 10-minute long instrumental, the title track,
Yeah.
Airport Sparrows. Let's see what you've got. Oh, the first track instead of this is almost 6.5 minutes long.
yeah.
Ghost Blog, just over 7.
Yeah.
So you stretch out a bit in this one.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I would, the next project I've got a couple different things cooking up. One is sort of more of a side project. We've got a bunch of different things cooking up.
A lot of irons in the fire.
Yeah, but the next small screens thing is going to be a small screens record with some additional horns and some additional strings on different tracks, for which individual members will write the arrangements, and then a friend of mine named Casey Sanford will write an arrangement or two for some horns. But one goal I have with that record is to sort of conceive it as a 45-minute album, even if I don't do the vinyl, so to kind of rein in it could have long songs, but I'll know how long the whole project will be.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Because I'd like maybe to, having done these sort of more extended, I've done 2 records that are over an hour. I kind of like to bring it in a little bit. But in terms of the length of the individual pieces, I'd love to keep balancing this sort of shorter 3-minute kind of pop form with these forms that can kind of move around a bit, leave room for improvisation. Sometimes the songs have oh, this is actually pretty tightly arranged and composed, and then this is actually totally improvised, or there's a really loose structure, or there's a chord change over which they're soloing, or it's actually free and we're not playing off of set harmony.
Okay.
So I like that there's some ambiguity about like, well, what have you planned and what is happening now, and sometimes that can, having a lot of room to stretch out. And also like some of these songs where the lyrics or the vocal part is proportionally smaller than the instrumental part is just kind of fun for me. It's just sort of different,
Yeah. Would that be like another bird-themed title? Because you have accidental birds and then airport sparrows. Are we going to stick with the bird theme?
Well, I might. I wanted it to be a bird trilogy. And although to be honest, that didn't happen until that was after the first album. I came up with the Airport Sparrows name and thought, oh, yeah, now we're a trilogy.
Yeah.
But I don't have the third title yet. So I guess it depends on whether I do that. And it might be this will be enough of a departure that it wouldn't merit being part of. Maybe I'm not sure. So maybe
the next one doesn't have to be part of the trilogy. You could always.
No, it could be that happens later.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. It doesn't have to come out in order.
No, they don't. Yeah. So
how did you come up with Airport Sparrows? What is an airport sparrow?
Well, let's see. I should go back a little bit. So accidental birds, that phrase has to do with, so if a bird through flight or through maybe being, landing on a freighting ship, a freight ship, or I don't know what, or the wind, a bird gets thrown off course and lands in a place that's not its normal habitat.
Okay.
And so if you were to observe a bird somewhere that doesn't belong, that might be an accidental bird.
Okay.
Maybe it has a few of its, fellow species, but maybe it's alone. And of course, that might mean that the bird won't be able to survive there because it doesn't have its normal food supply and that kind of thing.
Right.
Anyway, I kind of liked how the words, the sound of the phrase, and sort of thought that maybe you could apply it metaphorically in some way, like the characters are a bit adrift or a bit, isolated.
Okay.
And again, I didn't write the songs with that in mind, really, but,
okay.
But I kind of liked it. And then airport sparrows, if you go to an airport and there's a bird flying around, it's probably a sparrow.
Probably.
And it's mostly a sparrow. And I just kind of like that if you're in an airport and these birds are inside and then
the man-made things that fly are outside.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. I just kind of thought that would be, I think the instrumental tune, the genesis of that came before the title, but I was working on it for a little while and thought of that title. And then I asked us to, that song is pretty composed, but with improvisational sections sort of set aside for people. But then the opening thing, I just said, let's just try to sound like birds.
Oh, cool.
And so the opening minute and a half or 2 minutes is just improvised, us all kind of making sounds that we thought were bird-like.
Wow. So,
yeah.
That's awesome. I like the title. I like the music. I like the artwork.
Oh, yeah.
Richard
Barlow's.
All right. So is there anything behind the artwork? Any special, any pattern in particular to the way the arrows are set up on the album cover?
Well, I know that Richard wanted to imitate the signage that you see in airports.
Right.
Direction signs and wayfinding.
Yes.
And so the birds sort of seem to point in all different directions, so that kind of maybe evokes that a bit. I think the font is one that is the one you see on road signs and also in airports. I'm not sure what it's called, but
I don't know, but I really like the artwork. It's very,
thanks.
It's concise, it's simple, but it seems, I don't want to say chaotic, but it doesn't. The more you look at it, the more I see order. Like the outer ring is just a circle, and then I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading a little too much into it in my own head.
Yeah, I don't know. So, well, no, I mean, I really love what he did. I mean, he did the Accidental Birds one too, and that was a cool process where he cut out a lot of paper, different colored paper and different supplies, and then kind of arranged those and photographed those. So it almost, you could look at it and it looks kind of digital, but it's actually an image of something much more physical.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I thought it was something that done on the computer.
Yeah. This last one, I think he did do more on a computer, but he's his main, this is a little off topic, but Rich he's done a lot of different things, but one of his main things is he does these murals using chalk, but it's a kind of, there'll be kind of nature scenes, like a forest scene done in chalk, and it's more to it. I'm not describing it very well, but you feel like you're entering a forest, but it's this, and I don't really know how ephemeral they are. I'm not sure if they only last for a certain amount of time.
Yeah. Or
I think you can apply a material to make them permanent, but
I'll have to check that out. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
I love visual stuff. So
yeah.
So have you been able to play many shows with small screens? And what are you playing mainly the album tracks, or are you pulling in some older tracks or stuff that you haven't recorded yet? Yeah,
a little bit of all that. We played, I don't know, a number of times last year. We did a release show in the fall at a venue I really like here, and with some friends of mine as on the bill, Abby Wolf and Eric Mason, and that was a successful show. I was a little nervous because it was a bigger room than we would normally play, but it went well, and we had a really fun time. We have a show coming up January 24th at the Dakota, which is kind of it's not exclusively a jazz bar by any means, but it has those roots. So it has a piano on stage, so I'll be excited to use that. And, we kind of concentrate on this album. There were a couple of tunes from the previous album that most of us play on. We'll use some of those. And then I've written a couple of newer things that we played. I'm not sure if all those something in sort of something prose, and then try to more or less memorize it and then recite it over their improvisation. And sometimes I'll give little instructions, like maybe listen to this word, this cue, and use it to do this or make this change. Or it's very open. It's just like, just come in at this word and then we'll see what happens. So those have been really fun, and people really like them. I don't know if I'd ever document them. I'm not sure if they would be the kind of thing that a person would want to listen to repeatedly or not. But anyway, we've done some of those sort of recitation, improvisation things. I'd like to do more of that. That can be really fun. So are you playing more locally, or are you planning to maybe venture out of the Minneapolis area? Well, not a whole lot with this group. I mean, there are 6 of us. Yeah. And, I don't have like really robust markets outside of the Twins. There are scattered around the country and even a little bit elsewhere, some fans, but they don't really concentrate in anywhere where I can say to a booker, this show's going to kill. This is going to rock in Winchester. Right. Yeah. So I would like to do a bit more of that, I suppose, theoretically, but I don't want to lose money on it. Yeah. I've figured out so many great ways to lose money that I just reduce. I know the feeling. Again, parallel lives here at points. So I've really enjoyed the album. I've loved it's one of the ones that I can just sit down and listen to. Oh, that's so great to hear. Yeah. And just like, actually, I was listening to it again this morning, getting prepared for the show. I just laid down on the bed and I just had it on. I just put, cool. So yeah. My wife was asleep, so I put the headphones on and I just lay down and I just listened to it. And cool. Yeah. I absolutely loved it. So how can people pick up a copy? Are there physical copies available? Or is it mostly digital? Yeah. And how can they follow you to keep track of your upcoming projects? Oh, thanks, Mark. Well, I mean, Bandcamp is my site, like a lot of people. So if you search Dylan Hicks Bandcamp, it'll say Soft Launch Records, which is my just little operation. But you can easily say Dylan Hicks Bandcamp, and that'll get to that record, as well as I think there are 4 or 5 of them now that are in the era since I've been putting out my stuff independently. And so you can order things from there. I think that the new one is only a CD or digital. Some of the older ones have an LP component. This one was a Oh, I guess with this one, there's a 12-inch single that I'm waiting for. So if you really want vinyl, yeah, I don't know if that was a wise move. I have not so far sold enough to justify the manufacturing. So it's kind of in that's the vinyl thing is sort of tough. It's been, now there's these weird delays, as you probably know.
Yeah.
It's 7 years to get your...
I know, it's ridiculous. It's one of those things, I don't know if it's getting any better as we get further.
Yeah, I don't know. It was supposed to start to get better. I'm not sure yet.
I'm more of a CD guy myself, so I'll have to get it on CD.
Hey, I mean, I have both, but I mean, lately I've been like the used CD market is it's a buyer friendly market.
It really is. And a lot of the stuff that I get is older stuff. So
yeah. So like, you get a lot of pretty good stuff between $2 and $8.
I know. What kills you though is the shipping to get it here.
Yeah, if you have to go far afield, like Discogs.
We've got like one independent music shop, and I think it's actually the only music shop around right now in Chester. Yeah. Everything else was big box, and that's all like Best Buy doesn't have any more. Target, FYE. I think they're all basically record stores that used to be record stores that were chain record stores are now like novelty stores. You get all your Minecraft stuff there.
Oh yeah. We still have a number of them here, but if I find something, if I get a hankering for something that's a little bit off the beaten track, I sometimes have to go to Discogs, which is a kind of a fun site.
I love Discogs. I do a ton of my research off of Discogs.
Yeah, but you can definitely I'll sometimes be like, there's no domestic one. I'm not going to spend $20 to have this thing shipped over.
I know, from like Estonia or wherever it's coming from. Someplace ridiculous. And then you got to figure out, how do I convert, how much is a rupee to dollars or something?
Yeah.
I never trust that. I'm always a little nervous converting anything into.
I usually order in the States just to keep the shipping down. But, so they can do that, or I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I usually promote my stuff on that. I left Twitter. I was one of the people who left Twitter in the Muskian stage. But it wasn't, and not because I'm such a high moralist. I mean, he was exhausting me. It also wasn't really my bag. I don't get a whole lot of return for my Twitter buck, and that even before Elon bought it. And much like you, I don't have a dog in that fight. I don't care who owns Twitter. But I just don't get much of a return on it. I'll tweet out links to the podcast or things, and my wife will like it and retweet it, and that's about it. I get more bang for my buck on Instagram, and I like being a visual guy. I like Instagram better. Anyway. Yeah, I think there are times when I've enjoyed Twitter when I get into a little conversational dialogue with people of like mind. Yeah, I do know when I was on Twitter, I would meet some people who were like also interested in music or into jazz or into this or that I just never would know. And that was kind of fun. But in terms of the self-PR, my crowd really wasn't, it had a few friends, but it was a lot of people who were strangers. Yeah. They don't really care what you're doing. Exactly. It's not because they're mean. They're just like, everybody's doing something, Yeah. Facebook's a lot more friends and family, and they're like, that's the opposite, where it's like, well, after 26 years of work, I finally wrote this beautiful sestina that I've set to music, and had this Belgian string quartet play, and they all hit like amazing. Oh, yeah. But then you look at the figures, no one's listened to it. No. Yep. I'm so guilty of that too. Like I'll read like a sentence or two of some long post friends written. I'm like I don't really want to go through this. That's good. Just to show. Yeah, I'm still. I like that you're doing it. I like that you're doing it. Yeah, and that's honest. I'm happy you're doing it. It's great. I don't want to listen to it right now, but I'll like it. Maybe come back to it. I might get to it. I might get to it. I mean, if we spent our entire day, processing everything people were doing, that's what we would do. Yeah, it'd be my job. Yeah. I try to be very philosophical about it. I did get a funny email from somebody that has to do with technology in this issue, where this is a person I really like, And this person had listened to my, well, okay, the beginning of the story is that I got a little notification through Bandcamp, you know.
Okay.
Jane Doe or John Doe or whatever has opened up your record, you know. I gave them a download.
Okay.
And, that's nice of Jane or John Doe to check it out.
Right.
To be honest, that's unusual.
Okay.
Unusual for someone like you to respond to something and say, like, let me check this out. Everybody's busy, you know?
Yeah.
But then, like, I get the email, hell, man, I've been listening to this thing since last Tuesday. No, you haven't? You've been listening to it since 55 minutes ago. I saw the email.
Oh, jeez.
You didn't have to juice it up, you know. I thought it was like really generous of me to listen to it for 55 minutes. You send an email about it? I mean, you're so far ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to make it even better. Dishonestly.
Oh. Oh, I love it. That is awesome. Man, I've had a blast talking with you. Thank you so much for spending
thanks for having me on. Yeah.
almost an hour and a half with me. This has been a blast.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So,
Well, I'll have to cancel everything.
yeah.
I had my colonoscopy at 10.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. What could happen?
So I was supposed to give one at 10, so that worked.
Perfect. It's over Zoom.
Yeah.
This is my, I got to tell you, I mean, like, every once in a while, my wife comes into the shower, not into the shower, but into the bathroom where the shower is.
Yeah.
And, I'm like talking to myself, what are you doing? Oh, I'm conducting the interview that will eventually take place, when the world starts to take notice of my work. So you're helping me realize my shower fantasy.
Yes. Oh, if I had a dime for every time I heard that, I'd have like a dime.
No, that'd be great.